Hi, I'm Karen Rice and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be painting a step-by-step dandelion, very similar to the tutorial I did over a year ago, but this time I'm going to have a voiceover. So I hope you're going to enjoy it. I'm going to be painting lots of yummy techniques, including using my twig, salt, spattering and masking fluid. So shall we get started? Here are all the materials I'm going to be using. I probably won't get to use the sponge, but I will be using the salt, the masking pen and the pot, my HB pencil, my twig, and 3 primary colours, Phthalo blue, Alizarin crimson and Hansa yellow by Core Watercolours. But you can use any brand and any 3 primary colours, pink, yellow and blue. I'll have a list of alternatives in the description below. I'm using 2 brushes, but I'll also use another one as well later on, but they are black velvet brushes by Silver Brush, and I'll be using a size 2, 4 and 14 round brush. The paper I'm using is Saunders Waterford cold press paper. It's 9 by 12 inches. I've taped it with my framing tape onto a grey board, but you can use any board. I've already drawn the dandelion in. If you'd like to see longer, more informative videos with the drawing and lots more tips, techniques, and a downloadable document where you've got a drawing where you can trace the dandelion, why not think about joining my Patreon membership? And there will be details about this in the description below. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section. So let's get on with this painting. I'm using my twig to apply the masking fluid straight from the pot. And it's a really nice way of doing it and you don't get to spoil your brushes. So I'm just trying to get lots of marks in here, putting blobs on first and then pulling out a little bit of masking fluid. If you can get as much detail on the dandelion as you possibly can, just be careful with masking fluid, and whatever you do, don't blow dry it. It's very difficult to get off afterwards. So I'm just going to continue getting as many marks as I can on this dandelion, and I'm just using now the masking pen as well to put very thin lines on. It's a 0.7mm pen, and details about this will be in the description below. Please make sure you dry your masking fluid naturally. What I'm doing here is I'm actually spattering with my twig just to get some lovely little dots of masking fluid here, there and everywhere. If you get a blob where you don't want it, let it dry and peel it off. If you notice, you can see a little bit of staining on the paper, and I went a little bit wrong with my first wash, and I show everyone on the Patreon and the YouTube channel membership how to deal with that. So if that's something that would interest you, why not check the memberships out? So what I'm doing now is the paper is very wet, and what I'm doing now is I'm just mixing up some washes for the background. If you look at the reference photograph, there is lots of sort of greens and purples in the background. So I'm mixing up some of the blue and the pink for the purpley colour and some yellows and blues for the greens, and I'm varying the sort of colours. So I'm going to paint this wet on wet now, starting off with my lighter colour with my large size 14 brush, just dropping in these colours, wet in wet, leaving some gaps to drop other colours in. Just to say, I'm also using Opera Rose. I decided I wanted another cooler pink. So I'm going to mix up a puddle now, and I'm going to do a little bit of spattering. I've painted a little dark bit in the centre of the dandelion clock with the phthalo blue and the alizarin crimson, and I'm just spattering that colour now, damp into damp, just around the sort of foreground and on top of the dandelion to give a little bit of texture. Have this paint nice and creamy. A bit more pink there just to show sort of almost like wildflowers in the sort of foreground. Really load your brush. I'm using my size 4 round brush just to give that. If you're not keen on giving so much texture, you don't have to do this. What I'm doing next is I'm spattering some creamy yellow now just around there so they look like sort of really lovely light yellow flowers in the distance. I'm using my twig now to scratch into the paper to create some stems. It's lovely to do this because you feel like you're almost drawing with the stick. You know, it's really easy to do, it's fun to do, it's very creative. And now I'm dipping my twig in to collect a little bit of paint, and I'm painting it on with the twig. I'm using a little bit of sea salt combined with some table salt just to see what will happen with those two mixed together, and I'm sprinkling it evenly on the damp surface. I'm going to let that dry naturally, and then I'll give it a good blow dry just to make sure it's absolutely dry. Once your painting is dry and the salt has worked, hopefully you can brush it off with some kitchen towel and it should come off nicely. I'm going to take off the masking fluid with some framing tape using the sticky side flat to the surface, and then just rub it off. Once you remove your masking fluid, I'm going to paint the stem. So I'm mixing up the pink and the yellow first to make a really dark orange colour, and then adding the blue, and hey presto, it makes a lovely warm brown. And I'm painting this wet on dry with my size 4 round brush. Just painting it there, and I'm going to dilute this now, rinse the brush, take the excess water off on the side of the pot, and then just paint this watery brush so that the paint runs, so you get a lighter edge on the right hand side. And then I'm reloading my brush to drop in wet into wet that creamy dark consistency on the left hand side so it looks like the shade on the stem. And I'm putting a little bit of that now through the dandelion so it looks like it's going up towards the center. Now I've diluted my green, it's a very sort of really watery green, and I'm just putting a little bit of shading, a very transparent wash onto the dandelion, so it does cover up a little bit of the masking fluid, but you can still see the shapes of it coming through, so it creates a little bit of shading here and there. This is with my size 4 brush, and it's wet on dry. What I'm doing now is I'm getting some water and I'm painting it around the edge of the dandelion because I'm preparing myself to paint wet on wet onto the painted surface that is dry underneath. So be really careful that you don't do too much rubbing around with the brush so you don't disturb the paint underneath. And I'm really loading my brush just to really drop and drizzle this lovely wet paint onto the wet surface, being careful not to get any on the dandelion and letting the paint drizzle around. And what I'm doing is I'm creating a darker background so it really makes that dandelion stand out. I'm also dropping a little bit of green there, and where it's run onto the dandelion, just lift it off with kitchen towel. If this happens, don't let it worry you at all. These things happen in watercolour. It's just knowing how to fix them, that's the important thing. So I'm mixing up a little bit of the blue and pink again. It's so nice when you're just using these 3 colours. You know, look at the beautiful variety there, but it's just so simple sometimes, just using 3 colours. This colour's slightly creamier, the violet that I'm dropping in there, damp into damp, and I'm using that same colour in the centre of the dandelion just to create a little bit more darks and details. So I'm going to do the same thing on the left hand side. I have wet the background and I'm dropping in some gorgeous darks. So you can decide what those can be. Mostly I'm using the violets, but you can drop a little bit of green in there as well. And I'm using my lovely large brush. Just be careful that you don't lose the detail in the background. So don't overwork this stage. Keep it really simple. Don't be tempted to do any more. And I'm using the twig there just to pull out a little bit of detail on the edge of the dandelion. It gives a little bit of texture to the damp paint. I'm using Winsor & Newton gouache now. I thought I'd bring out my secret weapon. It's a nice thing to do with dandelions, just to give a little bit of sparkle on at the end of the painting, you know, to really bring it to life. And I quite like the combination of using masking fluid and the white. If you don't have any gouache, you could use white watercolour or even white acrylics, but I prefer the gouache. So once you put all the details on the dandelion with the white, just give it a quick spatter. Again, you don't have to do this, but I love this as a way of finishing off a watercolour. It just, again, gives that little bit of sparkle, texture and details. I thought I'd put a little bit more detail on the stem with the same colour, the orange mixed with the blue, so you get a brown colour, wet on dry with a small size 2 brush, and I'm just giving it one final spatter for good measure. I'm just removing the framing tape now to reveal a lovely white border. I really like doing this because it gives me time to assess to see if I need to do any more to the painting, but I really think I'll leave it there for now. I'm really pleased with it. It's such gorgeous colours and textures. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and you'll get updates of my latest videos. If you have any comments or questions, please put them in the comments section below and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. If you would like to see longer, more informative videos with lots of extra tips and techniques, why not think about joining my Patreon channel membership? Thank you again for watching. Happy painting. Bye for now.